Janky climbing, floaty combat, bugs. Assassin's Creed Valhalla is plagued by similar problems as its predecessor Odyssey. But there is one thing Valhalla fails at completely. Valhalla has one of the worst open worlds I recall in recent memory. Hello fellow humans, I am Luke, and today I would like to talk to you about the world design of Assassin's Creed Valhalla that make it not only boring, annoying and empty, but also actively hinders fun. Now all of this essay is just like my personal opinion or whatever, and based on my own experience when playing this game. To understand how Valhalla fails, let's briefly look at how the previous two Assassin's Creed RPGs handled the open world better. Running around the world, you could find question marks, which signified a place of interest. These places of interest don't necessarily have many things to do in them, but generally they do. These things that you can do vary from location to location. Loot things, kill specific people, burn objects, gaze at the stars. And of course, side quests, which are always marked on your map. You always know where to find them. It's not revolutionary, but it's varied enough to get the job done and fuel dozens of hours of fun. Valhalla has a lot less of kill this, and a lot more of loot that, alongside a large amount of new activities. And those are precisely the problem. The way Valhalla approaches its open world design is not an engaging world you can immerse yourself in, lose yourself and become part of an incredible adventure. It's a list of chores. Now what do I mean by this? In today's open world RPGs, gameplay has become more and more like working through a list of content, more than your own adventure, where you decide what you do and how you do it, which is what an open world game should be about. The previous two Assassin's Creed suffer a bit from this as well. All side quests are openly marked on the map, so you know at all times how many exist and how many you still have open, instead of like, let's say Skyrim, where you come across quests by accident, sometimes where no markers are given at all until you find a quest. Now doing it the way the previous games did, create a list for the player. You're done when all side quests are completed. Only then you've done everything. Now Valhalla does not have side quests. Not really anyway. It has a few quests that are part of the main mission, but there are very few of them, and you have no possibility of running through the world, engaging with new people and learning about them. To me, this is a problem. As you engage with the people of the world less, the world feels more empty. Now as all of its people are just there to fill the world, they're not there to live. Valhalla does not have points of interest either. Not really anyway. No question marks that you can go wonder what they are about. What does Valhalla have instead? A list. A literal fucking list. An actual list. Fuck, the shit writes itself, right? Who did this? Which dumb fucking idiot designer fucking make an actual list? Right. Valhalla has different regions. Each region gives you a list of wealth, mysteries and artifacts. These are the activities that you can do. The problem is these things don't enhance gameplay. They don't add anything of value and mostly they are not fun to do. They are meaningless chores to pad out the game, because the developers didn't have enough ideas to fill this game with real content. Now this sounds incredibly harsh, and it might be, but let us look at all of these activities and then you can judge how harsh I'm being. Alright, Harbor and High Point. These are fast travel locations you can find. A classic high point you have to climb up to a point and synchronize with it. Just classic Assassin's Creed stuff. Still awesome, 11 games in. 11 games? Seriously? We're 11 games in? Anyway, in Raid, you raid an area with your army of Vikings to get cargo. Cool. Exactly what I want. Next. Ingot gear ability. Now this is where it starts. The wealth part of the list is nothing more than a collectathon. Ingots used to improve your gear. Gear you equip to fight with. Abilities are special powers you can use in combat. All of it is for you, not the settlement you're building, so to call it wealth seems a bit off to me. Your settlement only gets the cargo. You get 75% of all this wealth. And it's mostly reskins of the same item, with slightly different stats. Barely anything that's actually cool and unique. And collecting most of these plays out exactly the same. You see it in a house, you try to get into the house. House is seemingly barred or locked on all sides, and you have to find the key, or the one opening or ledge to get into. Sometimes it's a chest with 3 different keys that you need to find all of them, or it's completely inaccessible until you complete certain story missions. This isn't terrible, but when nearly every single piece of wealth you acquire follows the same formula, it is incredibly stale. Oftentimes the same house with the same locked door and the same way of getting in is reused. Having items like this isn't bad, but it screams side content. Hidden items you can find in the wild with your own sense of exploration and cleverness. Not one of the main parts of the game. When you need the player to acquire an item, I see a few ways of deciding it. Don't tell them where it is and it's a treasure hunt on acquiring it. Hide it in a fortress with multiple barriers of entry and let the player decide how they want to get in, or put it behind a puzzle the player has to solve. Now all of these can be great, but they are at their best when the player has multiple ways of getting to it, and can choose themselves how to engage with it. All of the areas in this game have one solution. You're being forced to engage with it exactly how the makers want you to, over and over again, in an open world game about playing how you want. Amazing. So that's wealth. Side content disguised as a main part of the game and incredibly repetitive ways of getting it. Now on to mysteries. Cairn has heaped stack stones on top of one another in a mini game with questionable controls and physics. You need to reach a certain height and your creation needs to be stable. In reward you get an upgrade point. That's it. Nothing more. A mini game that controls worse than I can describe, that takes you completely out of the game to hear the same voice line every time at the start of it, and sometimes wants you to stack stones to ridiculous heights. Remember when you were an assassin doing assassin things? I sure don't. Let's stack rocks. Offering altar. Bring the altar a specific resource and you get an upgrade point. The things you need to bring range from things you will naturally gather along the way to things you would have to hunt for very specifically and aren't even guaranteed to drop by killing certain enemies. So my open world, single player RPG now is farming in it. Just what I wanted. I'm pretty sure one of the items I need for one of these altars I've never come across in my entire playthrough, and I finished the game after over 100 hours. Flighting is an epic rap battle of Vikingry. You took it out in a battle words with someone and have to decide which line is the best to tear apart your enemy in a set amount of time. The concept of this is fantastic. It's fun, it's different. I just wish they did more with it than just there being a few random people you can fight with and who raise your charisma. A stat that rarely comes up in some missions to convince someone of something. Now, Treasure of Britain. This has you run through a cave and get a stone at the end of it. That's it, really. These caves don't have anything cool or special in them. It's same old, same old. Get keys, break walls, get to the end, get the stone. Now what's the stone do?
One more
Well,
must serve some purpose.
But what is that? The game sure doesn't tell you. But I will. You bring all these tablets. Yes, you have to do all of these areas, alongside more you pick up on certain enemies and other places, to an unmarked cave. Putting all the stones together, you unlock Excalibur, the legendary sword. Now the idea of that, awesome. The execution, terrible. In a game where every single piece of content has a very clear mark, creates a big list of all things you can do. This one thing is completely unmarked. The game does not reward exploration, because you know where all the items are as they are marked. So to have a singular item like this is completely unmarked in a game that does not make exploration fun, there is a problem there. Now world events. This is what side quests have been replaced with. Except they aren't side quests, they are a tiny amount of content where you have to figure out what to do by context clues. The idea, again great, but the execution, again terrible. These world events are completely pointless. Here, why don't I show you a full event from start to finish.
Hey, you! Can you swim? Our father's down there, looking for treasure. He dove way down deep, but I can't anymore.
That lake goes deep.
Did you at least find the treasure?
Yes. Take this bracelet, your father's sword. By rights, it's yours.
Thank you, brave traveler. We knew you would find it. And what about father? Did you find him?
This lake must serve as your father's grave now, but with this last gift, his memory survives.
You mean he drowned?
Where's the rest of your family?
Mother got sick and never got better. And now she is under the ground. There is no one else. Rilda, remember? Father, sister, and Jorvik.
Sell that trinket for food. Then travel to Yond. Your father would wish that.
That's it. That's about the length and quality of most of them. They're mostly too short to tell an interesting story, and sometimes annoying to complete, like carrying several people up a hill or riding an NPC to an area 1,000 meters away. Legendary Animals, Lostranger, and Daughters of Larion are all boss fights, some with a line or two of dialogue, so as long as you find combat fine, this is fine. Animus Anomalies are puzzles. They take you out of the game for a bit and have you solve these blocky riddles with completely different mechanics than anything else in the rest of the game. Some of these are fine, some are annoying. Doing all of them unlocks a video with a bit of extra content or explanation, mostly just more things you already know or could puzzle together yourself. Fly Agaric has you eat mushrooms and get high. When you are high, you need to figure out a puzzle via contact clue or do a fight. These puzzles have you observe the area and figure out what door you have to pass through or what beacon to light by dissecting the visual information from them. Some are fairly easy, most are absurd and have way too much visual noise to keep you guessing what the right solution is. Standing Stones has a symbol split up on different stones and you have to figure out where to exactly stand so that the symbol pieces line up perfectly to create the symbol. You have to get it exactly right and you don't even have a little bit of leeway with it. So you're running around and have to find one perfect spot, getting frustrated as you think you have it, but the game begs to differ. So these are the mysteries, a barrage of different things that completely break away from the game itself. Most play out the same and most seem completely pointless. Artifacts. More things to collect. Oh boy! Rixager Fragment Codex pages you can collect and bring to Hidden One, in the same way as all things mentioned in Wealth. Treasure Hoard Maps, where getting it is just a start. It gives you a more or less cryptic hint as to where there is treasure hidden, and you have to find where that is. This is fine, fun even, but the treasure you get is either tattoos or ship parts for customization. Nothing special, just some ways to change the look of things that don't matter. Flank Paper has you do a parkour challenge as you run after these papers. This would be fine if parkour was any good in this game, which it really isn't. It's janky, and most of the time the papers give you enough time that you could just run along the ground instead of doing the parkour and then climb up at the end to get the paper. You're rewarded with more tattoos and chip parts. Roman Artifact. You go collect a Roman artifact that is hidden in the same ways as the Wealth, favoring parkouring and breakable walls as the go-to for it. You can turn in artifacts for statues to beautify your settlement with. Curse Symbol. Now these have you run around a cursed area and you destroy them to lift the curse. These mostly focus on having to stand at the exact right angle to shoot them. You get nothing as the reward for destroying them. Yeah, that is right, you actually get nothing for doing these. But
It must serve some purpose.
right? Right? No, no it doesn't. These things serve no purpose in the story, in the world, and you get no reward. It's padding for the game. It's a chore. It's a perfect example as to what is wrong with this game. This game is a list of things to complete. which broke my brain to the point that I was no longer playing to have fun at some point, but just to complete this list, so I could feel satisfied in having finished the game and move on. My favorite part of the game was after I completed this list already to the best of my ability and just did things I wanted to. Then suddenly I was having fun. Having this list completely broke my experience of the game. And even without the list, collecting wealth or artifacts, doing mysteries, they're all for the most part activities that stand in contrast to the rest of the gameplay. Random things that are tacked on, padding, chores. Valhalla is at its core a game about doing random chores to fill up a list. Every extra story mission can be completed in 2 or 3 hours. Doing all of these chores make up more than 50% of the game. This is not engaging world design, it's an interesting open world. It is meaningless filler material. There should be an actual game built on top of all of this, but there just isn't. The game has you go to Valhalla at some point. There you have more wealth to collect. Except, instead of gear or abilities, it's just the same stones. If you collect 20 of them, you get 5 experience points. This isn't a game where you're desperate and in need of these points. To finish the game you need around 300. I had more than 400 at the end of it. I filled the entire skill tree to the point I could only get linear stat boosts as there ran out of things to put in this game. In a game with very copy-paste cities and buildings where stealth is barely possible because of how open everything is, where combat feels floaty and enemies don't show their attacks properly sometimes, in a game where parkour is clunky and awkward, in a game that crashes and has major game-breaking bugs, on top of all of that, there's a completely pointless open world that's empty outside of filler content and pointless activities that are there so your game has some extra padding. Instead of locations to explore and complete objectives in, it has you loot areas as quickly as possible so you can go to the next bit of content on the map. Zero engagement with the world. This game would lose nothing if the open world was scrapped and you went through the main story in a well-designed open area. And it would be better. That's a very sorry state of affairs that the third try of Assassin's Creed RPG failed so spectacularly at creating an open world. Now, can I interest you in a round of Warlock?